Hello everyone. In this video session we are going to talk about the poem Woman to Man written by Judith Wright. We'll first discuss the composer, the poet, followed by the discussion of the central idea and theme of the poem. It will be followed by the discussion of the overview of the poem and lastly the development of the thought process throughout the text, and in the end part of the video we'll discuss the text of the poem Woman to Man by Judith Wright. Let us first discuss the poetess herself. Born in 1915, Judith Wright was a prolific Australian poet, critic, and short story writer who published more than 50 books in her lifetime. Judith Wright was also an uncompromising environmentalist and social activist, always campaigning for the Aboriginal land rights of original Australians. The poetess, as a writer, Judith Wright believed that the poet should be concerned with national and social problems, and this all reflected in her various writings. She died at the age of 85 in the year 2000. The poem Woman to Man is about the fear of a woman in giving birth to a child. The poem clearly exhibits the psyche or the fear of a pregnant woman. The poem is also about conception, or rather the potential of creating a child from sexual act between the woman and man, which is of course told from a woman's point of view. The central idea of this poem is based upon female sexuality and sensuality, and that sex is symbolic of life or even death if pregnancy fails. As a writer, Judith Wright was very bold in her writings in dealing with such issues. Since it was the poem was published long ago in the year 1949, when such issues were not discussed in the public, but as a well-regarded poet, Judith Wright had achieved a good reputation for expressing herself, and therefore she could write a subjective poem about this controversial and personal issue. The poem has a very intricate language, and this intricacy is the result of the subject it deals with. The poem contains a poetic expression about the complex state of womanhood during her pregnancy, which is a very uncommon subject. It is a very typical confessional poem, and it expresses feminine emotional responses at her critical phase of her life, the period of conception, the period of pregnancy. Let us see the overview of this poem. The first stanza of the poem depicts the image of the embryo, the fetus, when it is in the mother's womb. The second stanza extends this image, means the image of the embryo is elaborated in the second stanza, and there is a expression of parental love and affection for the child before it is born. The stanza 3 of the poem depicts the development of the child and also the mystery and secret of life. Various stages of the development of an embryo are discussed in this part of the poem, and also this intricate subject, the mysterious subject of childbirth, is elaborated in the third stanza of this poem. The fourth, which is the last stanza of the poem, reveals the unique and intimate linkage between the mother and the embryo. So, in order to understand the text of the poem completely, let us study the text of the poem line by line, word by word. Thank you.
Judith Wright. The eyeless laborer in the night, the selfless, shapeless seed I hold, built for its resurrection day, silent and swift and deep from sight, foresees the unimagined light. The poem Woman to Man expresses a woman's feelings as a wife as well as the holder of a future child in her belly. The woman, the mother in the poem, is anxious about the child. The poem opens with the description of the child, which is in the form of a fetus at this stage. The poetess describes the child as an eyeless laborer that grows inside the darkness of her womb. The mother, the woman, holds the child in her womb, and the fetus, the embryo, is said to be shapeless and selfless, like a seed. And the birth of a child is compared here with a resurrection day, the day of a new beginning, the day of starting something new, or the beginning of a new era. According to the mother, the child is safe, silent, and swift inside her womb. The child, which is a fetus now, is enthusiastically expecting to see the world or the world outside with its light when it comes out of the womb of its mother. The poetess says that the sexual encounter between the man and woman, the couple, has led to the creation of something in her body which has no shape and by now no identity. She cannot see it, however, its growth is deep and fast, which she can predict as she holds that fetus in her womb. So there is a expression of possibility, there is an expression of hope, there is an expression of a dawn, a new beginning, a resurrection. Now let's read the second stanza of the poem. This is no child with a child's face. This has no name to name it by, yet you and I have known it well. This is our hunter and our chase, the third who lay in our embrace. In the second stanza of the poem, the fetus, which is said to be like a seed in the first stanza, which according to the woman she has held after the sexual encounter, now it has started attaining a shape. The poetess says that the creature, although is taking its shape, but it does not have any clear cut shape, any clear cut face to say the fetus, the child, has no identity of its own. Still, the couple, the woman and the man, know very well that they have created it and finally it will develop into a human. This creation between man and woman, according to the mother, in a present status, has no is no child with a child's face. This could plainly mean that the mother is unaware of the gender of the fetus. They, the woman and her husband, have not yet named the child, and this indicates to the central idea of the poem, that is, the identity crisis of the Aborigines in Australia, that they are struggling for their identity and they have not received their true identity, which they actually deserve. The parents, they both exist with the hope that the child would bring happiness into their lives. The later lines of this stanza have a little bit complex idea. They call the child as their hunter and their chase. The child to be born would become the third member of their family. What the poetess intends to say is that she considers the creature, this new creature, both as their hunter as well as their chase. It is hunter because it accompanied the sexual encounter between the couple, which was meant for joy and pleasure. Means the sexual encounter was done with the purpose of receiving joy and pleasure, but it has resulted into a fetus, a child. So the fetus, the child, is said to be a hunter. On the other hand, it is their chase as well, because humans perform sex for it. Means sometimes the action of sex is done with the aim of achieving a child. So the fetus here is said to be a chase. The third stanza. This is the strength that your arm knows, the arc of flesh that is my breast, the precise crystals of our eyes. This is the blood's wild tree that grows, the intricate folded intricate and folded rows. In the third stanza of the poem, the poetess explains the stage of the further development of the fetus in her belly. According to the poetess, the infant will possess in it the energy and the strength of the man, of course, the father, as well as the flesh of woman, the delicacy from its mother. The child is said to be the product of the strength of man and the flesh of her breast, means the delicacy of the mother and the strength of the father. The child is said to be the crystal of their eyes, means the child would certainly be very dear to the parents. That is why it is called the crystal of their eyes, meaning that the child, when it is born, would bring hope and faith and posterity of generation to the couple. The child is also compared with an intricate rose. Like a tree, it will also grow into a human like the unfolding of rose flower. It will develop the ways, manners, nature, and all other traits of its parents. Means the complex structure would pass through many stages before it comes to the complete form of a child. Stanza 4, the last stanza. This is the maker and the maid. This is the question and reply. The blind head butting at the dark, the blaze of light along the blade. Oh, hold me, for I am afraid. In the concluding stanza, in the fourth stanza of the poem, the poetess describes the final stage of an infant in her belly. According to the poetess, the child gives the parents a paradoxical notions of their life in future. The child is considered as the maker and maid. The child is also considered as the question and reply. According to her, the infant that she, the mother, has created, along with her husband, of course, will be another maker in the future. Means the child would become a father. It will also give birth to a new generation. So that is why the child is said to be a creator, a maker. And also it is the product of theirs now. That is why it is called a made, a product. This child is both a creature that raises the question in her mind as well as the answer to her questions. This child is said to be an enlightened brain. Of course, it is without eyes at this stage, which is searching for the rays of light. Before it comes to the world, it is searching, and one day it will come out of the womb and would see the light outside in the world. Of course, before it sees the world, it has to pass through a scorching light of reflected by a blade. The poem, although ends with an optimism, and also ends with a note of fear. The mother gets frightened. The mother shudders at the thought of the child's head butting out of her womb to see the light reflected by the blade. Means the mother, she gets frightened that what the fetus would be feeling, the child would be feeling when it sees the scorching light reflected by the blade which is for used at the time of childbirth. This threat of blade metaphorically informs us about a mother's fear for a child and also the fear of a woman as an aborigine who suffers the worldly life once been experienced to reality. So it is coming out into the world that makes the poetess afraid. The poem, which starts with night, the dead of night, means when they had sexual encounter in the night, ends in the dawn, the daybreak. Conclusively, all we can say is that on the one hand, the poem focuses on the themes like love, conception, pregnancy, and childbirth. On the other hand, it refers to the identity crisis of Aborigines in Australia. So here ends the study of the text of the poem Woman to Man by Judith Wright. Thank you.